This is Brian Meador from East Carolina University. You are listening to the Sports Objective, the official, unofficial podcast of the Pirates.
Welcome into the Sports Objective, a great show. I used to always say that, and Kyle will get on me, but tonight we really do have a big show, don't you think, Kyle?
Yeah, it's not a great show. Special show. Special night is what I used to get on you about. But yeah, Dave. It's always fun to talk football as we get into the season here, or not get into the season, get into the silly season, the talking season, as it is July, and all the media days coming up, and the kind of the start of college football season to me is actually SEC Media Day, I think, for a lot of people. And so we will talk about our SEC opponent here tonight in the South Carolina Gamecocks.
Yeah, one of our podcast brothers has been great to us, Chris Phillips of the Spurs Up Show. How are you, man? Good to see you, and definitely love your work down there. And I know we're not a part of the same fan base, but I think you do an excellent job, and one of our podcast brothers. So appreciate all that you do, and you actually help us keep up with what's going on with South Carolina.
Well, Dave, I appreciate that, man. Sincerely, like I said before, appreciate you having me on. And obviously, yeah, excited to talk ball, man. 61 days, just 2 months. And, I've been saying for a couple of weeks now, you're going to blink. And like you're saying, it's going to be SEC Media Days. And then we're going to blink again. It's going to be fall camp. And, kickoff's basically going to be here. But, yeah, like you said, man, it's talking season, as the head ball coach used to say. And it's fun this time of year to be making predictions and projections and kind of looking ahead. And that's obviously what we're doing, man. But, again, I appreciate you guys. And, yeah, it's always fun to keep a close eye on what you guys are up to as well, and keeping up with ECU. Like I told you, man, before we got on, it's for whatever reason, especially I think with Skip Holtz being there way back in the day, I've always kind of kept an eye on East Carolina, and excited to talk about the Pirates, man, a really proud program. And, I'm glad they're renewing the matchup with South Carolina ECU, a game that never seems to disappoint. The Gamecocks have gotten, fairly fortunate to have the ball bounce their way, and I'm expecting another great game this year, especially in Coach Beamer's first season and first road trip, by the way, back to Greenville since 1997. So that'll be one heck of a road trip for South Carolina fans to make for sure. But again, appreciate you guys having me on. Pleased to chat with all you guys.
In fact, that was early on in my broadcasting career when Coach Scott was the coach back then, and always great playing the Gamecocks. And I tell you what, I hope, and I'll just say this for both athletic directors, I hope both athletic directors can get together, and maybe it's down the road for us, and I'm sure both teams, but it'll be a shame not to have this team, the two teams back together on the schedule. I know there's probably 27 and beyond. I think there's some open dates. I looked the other day, Kyle. You're the expert on the schedule, man. I think it's 27 and beyond.
Yeah, we got openings. A lot of teams now are getting into schedule for the 2030s, so it's probably about time we do the same. And we need, I know SEC teams as a whole here lately don't like to go on the road very much, unless it's the other so-called Power Fives. The American Conference is kind of right there on that peripherum where there's considered Group of Five, but it's almost Power Five with UCF, Cincinnati, et cetera. So, South Carolina, even if it's 2-for-1, I'm willing to do that with the SEC opponent, not an ACC opponent. So UNC, NC State don't get any ideas. But that's something that our athletic director really needs to do. We need, just get on the soapbox. We need an exciting non-conference matchup announced. We haven't had one really, to my memory, since the Wake Forest series was announced.
Yep.
And we haven't needed a lot of non-conference games, but going forward now, it's going to be 2022 next year. So, yeah, you need to start scheduling out. I'm sure I'd love to see the Gamecocks back on the schedule down the road, whether it's a 2-for-1 or a 4-game deal, maybe 2 in Columbia, 1 in Greenville, 1 in Charlotte, whatever it may be.
Yeah. And Chris, the very fact with the two teams, the one thing that we have mucho respect for the Gamecocks is the fan base is tremendous. I mean, you want to talk about traveling. You can see Gamecock fans everywhere. It doesn't matter if it's Charlotte, Greenville, Columbia. Same thing with Pirate Nation. You can bet on you can have a big game, And that's one of the things that it'll be our first home game, the second game of the year. I'm telling you, the one thing we talked about pregame in the green room, so to speak, is the very fact that noon start is going to be rough. And I'll tell all Gamecock fans, I know you guys have the same experience. Drink lots of water and Gatorade. Pace yourself on alcohol.
Hey, good. You guys are close enough to us. We get it. It's nice and hot. But no, I mean, like I told you off air, I'm making my first ever trip to Greenville and extremely excited. Yeah, I think Gamecock fans, especially in this season, will travel extremely well. But, I've never been, like I said, in South Gunna's last games, I guess, on the field to play against ECU actually came on the baseball field in the 2018 regionals. But, I've heard a lot. I've heard a lot about ECU fans and how rowdy they are. And so it should make for a really, really good time because Gamecock fans certainly hold their own. But it'll be a great day for college football. And again, two teams that, I think it's interesting, man. South Gunna in their first year with Shane Beamer. I know we're going to dive more into this in just a second, but Carolina, their first year, Shane Beamer. ECU, third year, Mike Houston. I think a team that's obviously looking to turn a corner with 20 or 22 starters back. But again, it'll be a great day for college football. And I agree with what Kyle was saying, man. You got to make this more of a regular thing, being so close regionally. And again, it just adds into the factor that every time these two teams play, it seems like there's dramatics. It's a great football game. And I'm excited, man. Like I said, a road trip that I've never made before. And I've heard nothing but good things about Greenville. So very excited to check it out. And it should be a lot of fun, no question.
Yeah, great tailgate scene. I do think because of the Scotty Montgomery years, it's taking a toll. Not just with Scotty, but there was some administration deal with the former AD. We ran a lot of fans away, but so it's not the atmosphere it was a few years ago. But hopefully we're gonna start getting back there this year. The tailgating scene, you'll enjoy it. Coming from an SEC environment, you expect a good tailgating scene. You'll get that here. And also just like the SEC, when you go down to Oxford or you go down to Athens or Gainesville or certainly in Columbia, you expect fine scenery, and there's plenty of fine scenery here, so that won't disappoint.
Especially after last year with no tailgating, I think people, it doesn't matter what school you go to, people are going to be out in full force taking advantage. So, you're absolutely right.
Yeah, so I think East Carolina kind of, we really don't like our SEC brother or ACC brethren rather, and so we kind of pride ourselves on having an SEC atmosphere. So we'll hopefully won't disappoint, and whatever you've heard about Greenville, hopefully it'll live up to those expectations.
Oh yeah,
I think as we get closer, and I know Bubba, I'm going to make this point, Bubba, and then you can chime in. We literally haven't had a sellout crowd in forever, and I really believe that once we get closer and closer, we're going to have a lot of people buy tickets. And I'll tell you another thing, Pirate Nation, you better go ahead and buy your tickets because there are going to be a lot of Gamecock fans that are going to be there, and you expect to see purple and gold, but you won't be seeing purple and gold if you don't go ahead and get your tickets. So Gamecock fans, I'm sure, will be buying a lot of tickets for the game. It's an easy drive back and forth. Again, that's why we need to do it. And go ahead, John Gilbert and Coach Tanner, go ahead and sign that, ink that deal. It's a no-brainer for both schools to sell a lot of tickets for the game. And Bub, I'll let you chime in. I know you've been wanting to ask a question.
Well, you guys were talking about the fan base at South Carolina and going back 20 years to the end of the Brad Scott years, and then Lou Holtz's first season when South Carolina had that 22-game losing streak. They were still packing Williams-Brice, which spoke volumes. A 22-game losing streak or whatever it was, and they're still filling Williams-Brice Stadium. Just
Bubba became the devil.
No, yeah, we lost him there for a second. I lost Kyle actually. But Chris, definitely respect. I think there is mutual respect for both fan bases. Again, I have nothing but good things to say about Gamecock fans, and not because you're on the show, but I have family that are Gamecock fans. I have friends that are game. That's another thing that's great about this game is that you have a lot of people that people that are Gamecock fans. People that are Pirate fans. I know a Pirate that you just met maybe last week. Right. So, there's all that. The fan bases are intertwined together, I guess, because we're so close. And as far as the football program for both, or there's a lot of pride there. It's not like we're just doing the game to make money, for both either side. There's a lot of at stake. And then with you guys, with SEC being the toughest conference, I know how bad the non-conference, you want to win every single non-conference game because you know that every single week. If it's Georgia, that's going to be number one. You have Alabama that's good. Florida's improving. I mean, like every single game, every single week. Tennessee is, I mean, every single team you can think of now, maybe with the exception of Vanderbilt, they're going to have to, there are questions to be answered there, but I think they're on the right track there with the right coaching hire. But definitely it's going to be a great atmosphere.
Yeah, and I think it's, what's interesting about you bringing that up with the non-conference and stuff like that and looking at it from the South Carolina perspective, what's interesting, Dave, is I think last year exposed a lot of teams with just a 10-game conference schedule. In normal years, at schools like Tennessee and Vanderbilt and even South Carolina, you think to yourself, if Will Muschamp was able to add in 3 non-conference victories around with those 2 SEC victories, would he still be the head coach? And the same thing goes with Jeremy Pruitt, and the same thing goes for Derek Mason. Hey, same thing goes for Gus Malzahn. So I think it really, if you had deficiencies, there was really nowhere to hide. And certainly, though, like you mentioned, man, this will be a huge one, for both sides, but certainly the South Carolina side of things, because I'm not sure we're really going to learn much about the Gamecocks in week 1. I mean, Eastern Illinois, with all due respect, an FCS opponent, not very good, obviously. So, should be a fun night at Williams-Brice, but will you learn a lot about South Carolina as a football team? Will questions really be answered? And then, of course, this game precedes the game in Athens against the Georgia Bulldogs, which South Carolina certainly will be a huge underdog, but that's always a really big game. And, of course, the last time they traveled there, they did beat the Georgia Bulldogs as a 24.5-point dog. So this is a big one on both sides for sure. And like I said, man, just talking about the series, I'm really glad they brought it back because it always seems to be wildly entertaining football, and I'd expect nothing different this year.
Chris, what can we expect from the Gamecocks offensively? What style of offense do you expect to see ran by Beamer and company on I can't think of the date, but
Satterfield. Satterfield.
Yeah. No. I was trying to think of the date of our game. What kind of offense can we expect to see on
September 11th?
September 11th, when you guys come to Greenville, what kind of offense is the Gamecocks going to be running?
Well, so I think the most exciting thing, at least for me, for South Carolina, because that's the million-dollar question, like what is the offense going to look like? And I'm not even sure we really learned that answer in the spring game when people were all, people, of course, fans don't draw unreasonable conclusions from a spring game, right? Of course they do. But either way, everybody wants to know, hey, what is that offense going to look like? And you look at the track records of Shane Beamer and Marcus Satterfield and where they've been and who they've been under. Now, I think what they're going to want to do offensively in their entire 10 years at South Carolina and what they're going to do this year are probably going to be 2 different things, because I think this is going to be a staff that's going to play to the personnel it has. And obviously, when you look at the personnel, running the football is the strength of this football team. You got Kevin Harris, the leading returning rusher in the SEC from last season, who I think is probably one of the most disrespected players in all the conference. You've got Marshawn Lloyd, who, I thought was going to be the bell cow and really the calling card of this offense a year ago. He goes down in fall camp with an ACL. He's back 100% now, doing 100% of everything. He should be back ready to go. And guys, I'll tell you, I think if he's 110% healthy, with all due respect to Kevin Harris, I think he's probably a better overall back than Kevin Harris is. But either way, you've got 1A, you've got 1B, you've got that thunder and lightning, if you will, whatever the nickname they come up for those 2 guys is. Then you've got Zaquandre White, Rashad Amos. You've got a deep running back room, and wide receiver is the biggest question mark on this offense. It is the biggest deficiency that you face offensively. Also, you've got a very, very young quarterback in Luke Doty, who's extremely athletic. You've got 4 or 5 starters returning on the offensive line. So to me, when I look at this team, everything bodes for South Carolina to be a 70-30 run to pass. This is going to be a team that needs to win running the football. I would go as far to say, guys, and I'll you can put this down, you can write this, tweet this, whatever. I really, truly believe in games that South Carolina throws the football 30 times or more, I think they lose every one of them. Running is going to be the key for this football team. Hey, you pick and choose your spots when you get a good matchup. And they've added some guys in the transfer portal, and you hope that a guy like Justin Stepp, the brand new wide receivers coach, maybe he can flip that room. But running the football is going to be the bread and butter for this football team. And I would say this too, guys, any coach worth his snuff is going to look at a game and say, okay, what can we do against this opponent specifically, right? And they're going to try to take advantage of that matchup. This East Carolina defense, I was looking pre-show, 201 yards per game is what they gave up on the ground a season ago. If you're South Carolina, Kyle, I'll tell you, I don't think it's going to be any secret. They're going to want to come in this game, run the football, pick and choose their spots where they can stretch the field and keep the defense honest. But I'd be shocked if we saw anything else but South going to pound the rock with Kevin Harris, Marshawn Lloyd, that stable of backs. Use Luke Doty's athleticism as well. Again, I think at some point they're going to want to run a system very similar to what you saw to Lincoln Riley at Oklahoma, to a little bit of what Joe Brady did With the Carolina Panthers, of course, again, those being the guys that Beamer and Satterfield were under, they're going to want to pull things from those guys that they worked under. But this year's team, in my opinion, it calls for that type of offense, a 70-30, using athletic quarterback.
Did that when he was at Temple.
Yeah. Like I said, use an athletic quarterback, run the football, and pick and choose your spots in the passing game. You got to play to the strengths of your football team, especially, like I said, in the matchup against East Carolina, where, again, they struggled massively stopping the run a year ago. So I think that's what you'll expect to see from the Gamecocks offense, not just in this week 2 matchup, by the way, but I think for the entire season in 2021.
Yeah, a lot of last year, our problem stopping the run with youth. Very, very young defense last year. Also, we played Navy, which always screws your stats up with the run. I do think we'll be much better against the run this year. In fact, I can just about guarantee it. But that is South Carolina's strength. Good offensive line, good running backs. By far your strength, and definitely the approach that.
Yeah, and I'd say in games, man, if they can't run the football, they just can't win. They just simply do not have the talent on the outside to, like I said, drop back 30, 40, 50 times and pick a defense apart. You know what I mean?
That's the easiest place to create talent. You guys have athletes. You can find some receivers. I mean, it's just not. I just can't imagine that there's not some kids, even if they're at DB.
That's why Justin Stepp was hired. So I mean, and I said this after the spring game, man. I would put it best this way: there's a lot of guys in that room. There's tons of guys. You got to find some dudes. They just got to find some dependable playmakers. I think there's guys with talent, but just going into the season, when you have to look at it realistically, that's going to be their area of concern. If they can find guys on the outside, I mean, I think this team's strength is going to be offense, anyways. You can find some options on the outside. You can have a lot of fun, but that early in the season, I think too, especially in that week 2 matchup. You got to go with your bread and butter, what you know works, and maybe if you can find something in the passing game, so be it. But it's got to start with the run, in my opinion.
No, you're 100% right.
Hey, now, Chris, if somebody's going to step up in that wide receiver room, give us a few names, potential candidates to do just that.
Well, I think the name that nobody's really talking about right now, a guy that transferred in, and obviously he sat out the spring, nursing some injuries, didn't play in the spring game, but Amarian Brown, the transfer wide receiver from Georgia Tech, I actually think he's going to be wide receiver 1. He's a smaller guy, 5'9", I think like 165, but has blazing speed on the outside. And the difference between a guy like him, Bubba, and bringing in a true freshman guy who, you're banking on is Amarian Brown has already done it at the Power 5 level. I mean, this was a guy that was torching, Syracuse and Clemson and Pittsburgh, and he's actually done it on this level before. So I think he's a guy to step up. E.J. Jenkins is going to go back and forth between the wide receiver and tight end positions, a guy who's 6'7.5". Now, again, is he going to be an every down player for South Carolina? I'm not sure. But if nothing else, going to be a huge red zone threat for them. I think you look at a guy like DeCarrion Joyner, someone who I think all Gamecock fans would agree his athleticism was extremely underutilized under the previous regime. Can he learn to really play the wide receiver position, and how do they use him in other ways? Is it jet sweeps? Is it wildcat? Is it bubble screens? How are they going to use his skill set? But I think he's another guy that could step on the outside. And then you've got guys like Ortre Smith, who showed flashes in 2017 as a true freshman, but has dealt with injuries. Josh Vann, who was a 4-star recruit and has come on campus and really haven't heard from him since. Xavier Legette, who was going to be my breakout player last year and just simply could not hold on to the football. You look at guys like Rico Powers and Jakari Caldwell and Mike Wyman and Chad Terrell. So there's a lot of options there. The guys, again, that I just mentioned. Jalen Brooks, also another one that I think could break out for you. But really, I'm going to be looking forward to start the season. Again, Amarian Brown, I think, is your number 1. I think they're going to use E.J. Jenkins a lot in the passing game, whether it be at tight end or wide receiver. Also, not, speaking outside of the wide receivers, Nick Muse is going to be a huge piece of this passing game at that tight end position. He showed last year he's a dependable guy, especially, obviously the tight end is a quarterback's favorite target, especially on third down. So I think Nick Muse will play a big role. But look for Amarian Brown and Dak Joyner right now. I'd say the top 2 guys that are kind of under the radar, if you will. But that kind of describes this entire room, man. I mean, the leading returning receiver for South Carolina had 11 catches a year ago. So it's just a completely clean slate, and I think Justin Stepp is probably the assistant coach on the staff that has the greatest opportunity to sort of show, what he's worth. Can he flip that room around? Because like you guys said, man, you don't go to South Carolina to play wide receiver if you're not talented. Like, you don't go there to play if you're just some scrub who can't walk on to another school. Like, you have to have some talent somewhere. So can Justin Stepp, can Shane Beamer, can Marcus Satterfield, can they be that coaching staff that can sort of pull it out of those guys That's what's left to be determined. But again, there's a lot of guys in that room, I think, with talent, but it's just getting them to produce consistently on Saturdays for you.
And of course, Chris, well, let's talk about the for those listening to this show, you actually have a hat on that says Beamer. Huge fan of, I think all three of us are of Shane Beamer. I like what his dad did north of us in Blacksburg. And of course, he we all know what a job he's doing recruiting when we talk about that in just a little bit. But I tell you what, in 2016, it's not a well-kept secret. He wanted the job at East Carolina. 15 rather. I'm sorry. Yeah, 15 rather. And he wanted the job. We didn't, unfortunately, give him the job. We gave it to someone else. And we know how that all turned out. But anyway, he had that connection there. He wanted the job at East Carolina. I know, Kyle, you've said a lot about how Frank Beamer having the last name actually helps you with recruiting. It helps you with coaching, to build the coaching staff.
Yeah, I think I always thought Shane, I always looked at Shane when he wanted the job here in 15. He wasn't a hot name then, but I thought because of his dad being Frank Beamer, because of his ties to this area, I always thought of the school like East Carolina or any other Group of 5 school. I thought he could have a lot of advantage of putting together a really good staff. Now everybody in the SEC has good staffs, so that's not really playing to his abilities or his strengths so much. In South Carolina, because Georgia has a good staff too. But I always thought he would have been a good fit here. Obviously didn't happen. When it goes to Georgia, then Oklahoma, and now he winds up the head coach of South Carolina in the SEC. But he's a guy that I've always followed that I thought made a lot of sense here. That for some reason a guy named Jeff Comfort didn't think he even deserved an interview at the time. Was all big on this kid named Scotty Montgomery. Obviously Shane. Shane's in a good spot now that he goes to South Carolina. But I think what you were getting at, Dave, is how's the fan base down there? Are they still on the Shane train, if you will? Is everybody still backing Beamer? I mean, you guys seem to really like the hire at the time. Is everybody still excited? And how was the staff taken? Is everybody pleased with the staff he put together?
I mean, I'd say this fan base is on cloud 9, man. I mean, it's truly, you see, I got the Beamer ball. We got all aboard the Shane train. We've got Shane Storm. Hey, whatever pun, however you want to spin it. No, I mean, everybody's fired up for Shane. It's really interesting how the entire coaching search sort of went about, if you will, because I remember, obviously specifically when it happened, and was Shane Beamer necessarily the lead candidate to get the South Carolina job? You sort of heard the normal suspects of the Hugh Freezes and the Billy Napiers and the Jamie Chadwells and all these different names. And then out of nowhere, you felt like, oh, yeah, there's this guy, Shane Beamer, who was at South Carolina before and was under Coach Spurrier. And, I had the opportunity to have a lot of some of the best players in school history at South Carolina on my show and on the airwaves, and a lot of alumni, and talk to them. And that name kept building momentum and talking about culture. That word was said over and over and over again, and talking about getting a guy to Columbia who understands the culture, who's going to embrace the challenge. And I think that really was, when you sat down and the more you thought about it, you understood and you realized, man, it really is important to get a guy who understands what South Carolina is about, who's seen it at their best and truly loves this place and believes that they can get back to those heights. And again, of course, Shane Beamer was on the staff in 2010 when South Carolina went to the SEC championship, the only team to ever do so. So listen, I think the last 6-7 months have been incredible. Gamecock fans, I joke with people, Gamecock fans have gotten that hypothetical hug that this fan base needed after the last couple of years. Things, man, especially last year, you guys saw probably from afar, at the end of the Will Muschamp era, things just got so toxic. They spun so out of control. Things just hit the fan, and far beyond even what I ever expected. And you needed a guy to come in here that was going to be a shot in the arm for the fan base, man. Bring everybody together and inject that positive energy and that enthusiasm. And listen, like you guys said, it's talking season. We're in the midst of the honeymoon phase, and I think everyone is very much so bought in on Shane Beamer. He wants to be at South Carolina. He truly, shows that he loves being at South Carolina. He's been very active on social media, which of course is a big thing right now. Been extremely active on social media, going out of his way to promote the Gamecocks every single day. And of course, then you factor that in what he's doing, on the recruiting trail. So again, we're in the midst of the honeymoon phase right now. The vibes are high, the morale is high right now. And of course, South Carolina at some point is going to hit adversity. They're going to play football games, and you got to build a program. But I tip my freaking cap, man, to Shane Beamer, because we can talk about recruiting and each individual prospect and how exciting it is. You know, South Carolina right now, of course, which right now doesn't mean a ton, but right now they're ranked top 20, top 15 in recruiting. Why, you know, after just a couple of months ago being like 100th for the 2021 cycle. But even beyond that, the way, in my opinion, that Shane Beamer has been able to just completely flip the energy, flip the momentum, flip the buy-in of the fan base and get everybody on board and sort of believing in each other and believing in one another. And, you know, I've heard things from behind closed doors in the building that the culture is just night and day different and better. And, you know, when I talk to people about this job and Shane Beamer taking over, you know, for a lot of schools, culture wouldn't have been the most important thing in the hiring process. That would, you know, maybe head coaching experience would have, maybe coordinator experience would have. But when you were at the point South Carolina was at after the Will Muschamp era and how broken things were, I think getting a guy in here that could reunite everyone, get everyone back on the same page and believing, because, hey, you guys know, if you don't have hope, you don't have anything. And that's what happened last year at the end of the Muschamp era. Fans lost hope. Apathy started to set in. And, I mean, you were in college football hell, is one of the best way one of my buddies from Saturday Down South described it. So you were truly in college football hell. So I think that I know the morale is extremely high, man. Everybody's all aboard the Shane train. Beamer ball has taken over Columbia. And, of course, you know, I'll be interested to see how Shane Beamer sort of navigates that first season and keeping those positive vibes high. Because, again, guys, they're not going to win every game, not even close. So there's going to be some ups, there's going to be some downs, but that will be the time when you really start to lay the groundwork, lay the foundation, and establish that culture, if you will. But certainly, you know, we're in the honeymoon phase, and it feels really, really good after the last couple of years. I'll be totally honest with you. Now, in regards to the staff, you know, let's put this out there too. By the way, as I say that, Shane Beamer's a gamble. I mean, look, would anybody disagree? I mean, he's a gamble, right? He has no.
I think in the SEC he is.
Yes.
I think.
Right.
I think there was a lot of Group of Five schools. You know, when Old Dominion came up 2 years ago, I thought, well, there's the perfect coach for Old Dominion. And for him not to get an Old Dominion or even an East Carolina or an App State, goes to South Carolina. That's a little bit of gamble in the to start your head coaching career. Yeah. Particularly when you hadn't even been an OC or DC, to start your head coaching career in the SEC. That's kind of starting. It's kind of starting in deep water. You're swimming in the 12-foot in before you even step foot in the 3-foot in.
Well, and Kyle, you make a great point, because I've actually got a buddy of mine that works in college football, and that's actually exactly what he said to me. He said, Chris, what really surprises me about Shane Beamer is that normally a guy like Shane Beamer, you know, and this is with all respect, he goes to an East Carolina first. He goes to an App State first. He goes to an Old Dominion first and sort of gets his feet wet, earns his stripes, and then he gets that next big coaching job. Shane Beamer just completely skipped that step. And again, I'm not fighting saying he shouldn't have gotten the job. I'm extremely happy with the hire. And hey, the results on the field, they'll tell us all we need to know. But, you know, back to my point, it's a gamble, right? I mean, he has no head coaching experience. He's never been a coordinator. And guess what? When you're talking about the staff, here's a key number for you guys. 0. South Carolina's offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator have a combined 0 plays called at the Power 5 level. So that's not an opinion. That's just a fact. So I think everyone's really excited because it's
your defense coordinator hire was excellent.
Right. No, I agree. No, and I agree with you. I like Clayton White a lot, but I would just say, you know, I think there were some mixed feelings with Marcus Satterfield, because when Shane Beamer got the job, and everybody said, okay, Shane Beamer's going to go out and get elite assistants, and sort of people started to get these ideas in their head. But what I think fans really, really like, it's a nice mix of, there's a lot of guys who do have NFL experience, who are veteran guys, but there's also a lot of young, hungry coaches who you feel like have a chip on their shoulder and they want to prove something, and they're using this as their chance to do so. So again, yes, it's a roll of the dice, and I gave the overall grade for the coaching staff a B, because it's like one of those things where you feel good about it, but hey, again, it's a roll of the dice. We'll see. A lot of guys have a lot of things to prove, but, you know, overall, I think that's what South kind of needed, man. You couldn't just do the whole SEC retread thing, and, you know, I would have hated if the Gamecocks hired a Hugh Freeze or just kind of make that typical hire. South Carolina is not a typical job. It's not a typical place. It's really hard to win. You've got to think outside the box, and I do think the Gamecocks did that in assembling their coaching staff for 2021 and beyond. So,
well, reading the article today on The Athletic, what we learned from South Carolina and Josh Kendall, that very fact of last year when you had the 21 class is 80th ranked class in the country, and I'm not a recruiting guru expert, but just in the last, let's talk about that, just in the last, few weeks, all of a sudden South Carolina has gone from the 80th class last year to a top 20 class. So on paper, you can already say that it was definitely a move in the right direction. Like you said, wins and losses. You got to, that's where the business we're in when it comes to sports. But man, on paper, recruiting, with the coaching staff that they've got, you got to say something's going right if you see that the experts where the recruiting is have you guys a top 20 class now for next year.
Yeah, and I would say this, Dave, and again, this is with all due respect to those guys in the building because they've done a phenomenal job. I mean, when you think about it, South Carolina went 4-8 and then went 2-8 and fired its head football coach. The Gamecocks right now are in conversations with some players they have no business being in. I mean, Oscar Delp, for example, I don't think that kid should have ever stepped on campus at South. And that's not, again, me putting out a negative recruiting pitch, but I've had somebody tell me that's in the building say that. It's like, Chris, what we're doing right now in recruiting, it's incredible. And again, it goes to the job that Shane Beamer has done in completely flipping the attitude and flipping the mindset and flipping the energy around that program. So, yeah, certainly, man. Will South going to finish in the top 15 or wherever they're at right now? I don't know because we've got a long way to go between now and December. But the job that I think Shane Beamer is doing right now, I'm in assembling this recruiting class. Whatever he's selling, these kids are buying right now. And get this, we all know, though, at his last stint at South Carolina, when he was there 2007 to 2010, he was the mastermind that recruited some of the best Gamecocks ever in school history. So the guy knows how to recruit, right? It's not like he doesn't know how to recruit or he's never done it before. So I think you're certainly seeing that. And again, man, positive energy is infectious. And when you have a positive attitude and you work your tail off, I really do believe in sports and life and whatever business, good things happen. And I just simply put, I think that's what you're seeing with Shane Beamer. And again, I would say this too, you as the fan base, you have to trust that Shane Beamer and his staff are, master talent evaluators. And also they're going to be master talent developers also because, the reality is you're not recruiting top 5 classes at South Carolina. You're not recruiting top 10 classes at South Carolina. You can still win doing that, but you have to develop talent. And Shane Beamer said that when he took the job. Man, you got to be able to recruit, but you also have to be able to develop. Recruiting wasn't the problem with the last staff. It was that there were a lot of guys that got on campus, and I mentioned a few of them earlier in the wide receiver position. They got on campus, and you just never heard from them again. They just were not developed. So I think fans are excited for both sides, but certainly, man, like you said, the momentum that Shane Beamer has built on the recruiting trail after all of the turmoil this program was facing just 7-8 months ago, it's incredible. You can't say enough good things about the job the guy has done to this point thus far.
What I always like to say about you talk about having talented kids on campus that didn't develop. What I always used to like to say, talking about previous coaching staff, if you have a coaching staff that brings in 4- and 5-star players and they can't develop them, then by the time they're juniors, you know what you have? A 4- or 5-star high school player still. That's all you have.
Yeah.
So
that's a great way to put it, honestly, man. That's a great way to put it. I never thought of it that way, but that is hitting the nail on the head right there, honestly.
Yeah. I mean, when you get here, if you're a 4- or 5-star player, by the time you're a junior, you need to be getting towards NFL caliber. So it's all about talent development. No matter how good of a recruiter you are, you got to develop that talent. Very few guys come in Division I ready.
I was going to say, Kyle, I used to say this about comparing Will Muschamp. I said Mark Stoops at Kentucky is a perfect example. He's everything that Will Muschamp was not, in the sense that Kentucky never out-recruited South Carolina, but they were recruiting guys that bought in their culture, they're still doing that, right? Bought in their culture, bought in their system. Yep. Hey, they're hard-nosed kids. They understand what to expect from Kentucky football, and he gets them and he develops them, and they fit their system and scheme, and it works. They make it work. So, yeah, like I said, man, I think I might steal that from you, by the way, the whole 4- and 5-star high school kid analogy. That's literally perfect, and I think that's kind of what you saw happen at South Carolina, man. It's all happened at South Carolina. So hopefully, again, that's why Shane Beamer was hired. There's got to be more development on campus because there's good players on this team, but you just feel like there are a lot of guys that were severely underdeveloped with the previous staff. So we'll see, though. We'll see.
Your defense at times is pretty solid under Muschamp. Right. You bring in your new defensive coordinator, comes over from Western Kentucky. I don't know how much people follow Western Kentucky football, but in my opinion, he's the reason they've been an upper echelon team in Conference USA the last few years. With all respect to Coach Helton, he's a hell of a coach. I really like the hire a lot. I know some people were probably expecting an SEC defensive coordinator, and I think he got one. Actually, I think he belongs. I think he'll be a head coach at some point.
Yeah, Yeah, no, I like Clayton White a lot, I should say, running the 4-2-5 scheme. And I think it'll be a welcome change. And I'll tell you this, man, that was the thing I keep talking about last year, but that was really what did Muschamp in, man, because when he got the job at South Carolina, you sort of expected the offense was going to be average. It was going to be a struggle. But I remember going in the last season, once we realized we were actually going to have a season, going in the last season saying, if South Carolina is mediocre or below average on defense, that will be a bigger indictment on him as a head football coach and a coach in general than if they struggle on offense. Everybody expects you to struggle offensively, but the defense in year 5 has to be the calling card. And when you look at the talent they have and had, it just simply wasn't. So, yeah, Clayton White, I think that's one of those hires. Again, we do get caught up. Some people do. And, how many snaps has he called at Power 5? How much Power 5 experience does he have? At some point, you kind of feel like defense is defense, right? Like, don't make it too complicated. Let your guys go play. Let your athletes be athletes. But again, you look at the numbers, and Clayton White was the head of some fantastic defenses for the Hilltoppers. So, yeah, as far as Clayton White, man, I've liked everything I've heard and seen from him, looking at his track record, his resume, if I can say that. Like everything you've seen. Again, that 4-2-5 scheme, it's what South Carolina ran under Ellis Johnson when they were most successful defensively. It really lets your guys be athletes and rush the quarterback. And they've got some talent on that side of the ball. Of course, the secondary is where the big question mark is, and they've done their best. I think Shane Beamer's done a phenomenal job trying to address that through the transfer portal with Karan Krutney, the freshman All-American defensive back transfer from Kansas. You've gotten a guy like Tyrese Ross from Washington State. You've gotten a guy like Marcellus Dial in the from JUCO, if you will. He participated in spring, but that's still going to be the question mark. But now I'm excited what Clayton White's going to bring to the defense. It's funny, man, because we talk about this South Carolina defense going into the year and looking ahead and saying, oh, man, you lost J.C. Horn, you lost Israel McQuamu, you lost John Dixon and Jamie Robinson and all these guys in the secondary. How are you ever going to recover? Well, you lost those guys from a defense that gave up like 36 points per game and got gashed week after week after week. So there's two sides to it. You say, oh, that's going to be a weakness, but how can they be any worse? And I'm sure you guys feel the same way about East Carolina's defense. It's like, how can we be any worse? You can't be worse than we were last year. So
we were there, man. We were under Montgomery. Good God.
We can be worse than we were last year.
Fair enough. Maybe I should say, hey, the 2014 defense in Columbia was probably worse than that one that I'm mentioning last year. But either way, and I think that I know for a fact the strength of this defense, and I'm sure what Clayton White is licking his chops about, is that front 4 and that front 7 for the Gamecocks. Guys like J.J. Nigbari, who's a pass rush master. Jordan Strawn, who led all of college football in sacks, the grad transfer from Georgia State. You've got Jordan Birch, Zach Pickens, who are a pair of 5-star quality players that I think you're going to see them make a huge jump this year. Tonka Hemingway, Rick Sandage, Brad Johnson, Aaron Sterling. You just go down the list, and you got some new linebackers and Mo Kaba and Debo Williams as well. So there's talent on that defense. Now, how do the pieces all come together? I think the biggest question mark for South Carolina defensively, guys, and I'll be interested to see in the game against ECU because you've got Holt Naylors. You've got talent on the outside. You've got a really, really good running back with it's Rajay Harris, right? I think behind center. I know we talked about him before. So ECU's got weapons. They're going to score, right? They're going to have a good offense this year, most likely. So the question mark I'm going to have defensively, not just in this ECU game, but all throughout the season, is this going to be a team that's more aggressive, brings pressure, wants to help out its secondary and sending an extra guy or two guys? Or does South going to say, okay, we've got talented enough pass rushers. We can get there with 4. We're going to back off a little bit, and we're going to help out our secondary guys in playing more coverage. I think that'll be the biggest question. But, no, I feel good about Clayton White, man. I felt great about the hire when you looked into it. When you first heard the name, you said, who's Clayton White? You look in the hire, you look at the statistics, look what he did at Western Kentucky. I think it was a really good hire. I think it will be proved to be a good hire for South Carolina this fall and, throughout his tenure in Columbia.
Speaking of recruiting for East Carolina, with Mike Houston having ties to the Palmetto State at the Citadel, you need to look at the number of South Carolina guys that we have on the East Carolina roster between the last couple of years. Am I lying, Kyle? It's almost like the East Carolina is.
Yeah, we got a lot of South Carolina kids, and they'll obviously be fired up. All the kids are going to be fired up. Anytime you get an SEC opponent and you get them in your home stadium, our fans and the football team will be fired up. But obviously, the kids from South Carolina, that's going to be added motivation for them to, some of them maybe feel slighted if South Carolina didn't offer them, or, they just want to show off in front of in a game they know all their family and friends and people they went to high school with are going to notice. And I'm quite sure there's some players across those lines that, are South Carolina natives that they went to high school with or played against in high school. So yeah, you're always gonna have some of that anytime you face a regional opponent, and particularly like you said, the last couple of years under Coach Houston, we have signed a lot of kids from South Carolina from his time at the Citadel, and then there's right there you mentioned, Coach took the Citadel. South Carolina was kind of in a bad situation with Spurrier stepping down the middle of the year, but Houston, I'm sure those South Carolina fans remember Mike Houston and the upset by the Citadel. I'm sure that's going to get some of their attention just seeing the name Mike Houston across the lines.
Kyle had to bring that up and just needle me just a little bit. Hey,
when we have the tailgate show, I'm sure you'll have a celebrity death match between the two of y'all.
Hey, I'll never forget, just real quick, going to that game that day. And obviously, this is way pre TSUS and all that stuff. But I went to that game with my buddy, and I think South Carolina was a 21 or 21.5 point favorite. I used to dabble in the sports game. I still love looking at the lines and everything, but I think they were like a 21.5 point favorite. I remember looking at my buddy walking the stadium saying, man, I didn't bet on it, but I said, man, we're not 21 points better than anybody right now. And sure enough, it came to fruition. So, yeah,
let's talk about one of the big parts. So Frank Beamer obviously was special teams. What about Beamer ball? I'm sure that's been a big focus with Shane Beamer. I mean, the son of one of the legendary coaches that put a strong emphasis on one of the fundamentals of the game and that side of the ball, if you will, with special teams. How is Beamer ball looking in Columbia?
You know what's funny, Dave? You asked that question. I feel like that's one of the most underrated and least talked about aspects of Shane Beamer to this point, which is really interesting. I mean, listen, again, I know it's not sexy to talk special teams and talk punters and kickers and all that, but when you talk about blocking punts and blocking kicks, and if you ever look at the statistics, man, I don't have them pulled up in front of me. When you look at games, when you block a punt or kick, chances of winning, I mean, they just skyrocket. Like, you never lose when you're able to make a.
You know what? You say that. It's about the stats about 80%, 80 or 85% of games that you block a punt in, you win. We've done it. I can remember in recent years, East Carolina's done it twice and lost. We did it against Georgia State in a game that was just a hot mess that we lost, and then I remember doing it against BYU back in 15, and we lost that game.
Yep. But the
Kyle
thing
just proving my stats right now.
No, it's still a stat that I'm familiar with, and you're right. But I can just think of two instances recently because that's why I remembered that so much. Is that you never lose a game you block punts in. Damn if we ain't done it twice.
Well, that's the state of our program, but we're headed in the right direction. I tell you what, with the Georgia State game, that was one thing that has been a concern the last few years is the offensive line. So what I would look at for the game, I'll say this real quick, is for me, I'm interested to see that defensive line of South Carolina versus the offensive line of East Carolina. That's going to be you always talk about winning and losing in the trenches, but that's a matchup as far as across the board. I'd love to dive into, and when we get closer, we'll have you back on when we get closer to obviously the game. But that's an area right off the top of my head I wouldn't say right now a mismatch. I think they've got a great coach in Shankweiler. Steve Shankweiler is one of the best in the business. I think they've done one thing I'll say about the Pirates this year. You can tell everybody this is the deepest team we've had since 2015, without a doubt.
Hey, for sure. Hey, by the way, 69 career starts on that offensive line for ECU. 69. I was able to look at that earlier, but now 20 of 22 starters, like you said, man. I mean, this is, and somebody, one of my good buddies made a really great point about this. Most coaches, they make that jump in year 3.
Mm-hmm.
If you really look at that tends to be the trend that coaches, I mean, they make that jump in year 3, and it's year 3, of course, for Mike Houston, and 20 of 22 starters back, and you got all year. The big question, I think you guys would agree, would be the defense, because offensively, I think, again, you've got a guy like Holt Naylors. If you have him, you have a chance, and you certainly have a chance with Holt Naylors man in the way, and if they can find answers defensively, I think ECU should have a much, much better season at least than they had last year and in the last couple of years. No question.
I'm actually excited about the defense because if you look at last year, we had a first-year defense coordinator,
right,
coming over from was it Kennesaw State? He was at
Kennesaw State.
Great FCS defense coordinator, had a top 5 FCS defense, but he didn't even get a spring ball last year because of COVID. Came in and establishing a new defensive system, very young defense, and we got better as the season went on. Every game that defense got better. So I'm actually excited about the defense. I really don't. I really don't think we have a true weak point, except just that we are still building depth everywhere. We have a lot of starters back, but behind those starters, there are some positions we are extremely deep, like tight end. But there are other positions like the offensive line behind those starters. There's not a lot of depth. So that's where I think we're pretty good everywhere. I don't think we're great anywhere. And you're right about Coach Houston going into year 3. I really don't think some people realize how close we were last year. We went 3-6. I don't know how close you followed it, Chris, but when you talk about getting screwed out of a game, everybody says that. Our game against Tulsa was probably one of the biggest screw jobs you'll ever see in your life. So that you have win number 4 right there. Navy, we didn't have Holton Ahlers. We lose that one by touchdown because of COVID.
A false positive.
Yeah, false positive. So you have Holton, you win that one. We were really close last year to being a 500 football team. I think we could be really good this year. I think one of the biggest problems we have is our schedule. I think COVID hurt us big time because you mentioned 20 or 22 starters back. We would have had that anyway. We were a young football team. Right. But now you've got so many people that have COVID starters back that wouldn't have. So I actually think a little bit COVID hurt us because, in conference particularly, there would be some teams like Cincinnati that would have graduated pretty much their whole defense.
Cincinnati. There was a lot of senior-led teams like Tulane and Cincinnati come to mind off the top of my head. Those guys would have been gone, like Kyle said. They're going to stay. But you know what? It all evens out in the wash for sure. How is we know how many fans go to the games at Williams-Brice, but as far as season tickets, how much does the excitement there for Shane Beamer add to selling season tickets?
Oh, I mean, I think immensely, and they've even gone back to 2010 pricing with Shane Beamer. They're doing a promotion. Hey, we're gonna drop the in this day and age. I mean, to drop ticket prices is just. I mean, you don't do that, right? So, kudos to South Carolina. They're trying to get butts in the seats, and I would say I would expect a raucous, packed, wild atmosphere week 1 against Eastern Illinois and all throughout this 2021 season. But, back to kind of what Kyle was saying too, man, just on East Carolina and you guys, the team, I'll tell you this, starting next week, I'm going to give my official predictions for the 2021 season. I'll talk about things like, key 3-game stretch and break down the games and win, losses, and toss-ups. And I'll talk about the key game for the 2021 season. And, some people argue, hey, it's Shane Beamer's first year. There isn't a must-win game. And I agree to an extent. I think the record is somewhat secondary in Shane Beamer's first year in the sense of this is a year you're using to lay the foundation, to build the culture, to establish all of those things, right? I just want to see a well-coached football team in 2021. And some people might scoff at what I'm about to say, but I'm telling you guys right now, I look at South Carolina's 2021 schedule, and I look at this East Carolina game. I think it's the most important game for South Carolina this year because the goal for the Gamecocks in year 1 of Shane Beamer, which it's very similar to Will Muschamp's first year, but the goal for the Gamecocks in year 1 is 6-6. It's bowl eligibility. You talk about recruiting momentum and all the momentum you've built to this point, in the honeymoon phase, but the way you're kind of flipping the energy around the program, you're starting to get some kids to buy into your message and what you're doing. We all know, man, like you said, it's a results-driven business, and you can win football games. Good players want to go play at schools where they are winning, right? Or where there's the potential of, hey, you can sell, hey, we're just 2 or 3 more guys away. Come to Columbia, be a legend, do things that have never been done here before, and that's something Steve Spurrier was so good at doing. But I look at this schedule for South Carolina. A lot of fans will say Kentucky. I've ran multiple polls on this. It's just something really fun to talk about. Fans will say Kentucky. They'll say Tennessee. They'll say Auburn. They'll say Missouri. They'll say one of those swing games. But I look at South Carolina's season this way. They can lose any of the games I just mentioned to you guys and still get to 6-6. You can still get there. As painful as it would be, you can still, if you lose to Kentucky in week 4, you can still get to a bowl game. You can still do it with your schedule. Realistically, for the Gamecocks, you cannot lose to East Carolina and find 6 wins on the schedule. You just can't do it. You have to go 3-1 in non-conference. And again, like you guys said, there's a lot of South Carolina natives on ECU's team. The Gamecocks will be entering week 2 with probably still more question marks than answers. And ECU, with all due respect, they're going to circle this one on the schedule. No doubt. Bottom line, like you guys said, home game, SEC team. They want to stick it to South Carolina. The Gamecocks are in a pretty, vulnerable spot right now, I'd say. And ECU has come so close to beating Carolina year after year, matchup after matchup. And again, like we were saying, when's the next time ECU is going to get the chance to host South Carolina? It's been since 1997. So I just look at this one, and hey, I might be wrong. South Carolina might win by 3 touchdowns, and I look like a complete idiot. But looking at this game right now, guys, I'll tell you, and I'm not going to make a prediction or anything, but I think it's a one-score game. Like, that's how it feels to me. Like, I really think this is going to be a back and forth, 31-24, 34-28. Like, I really think it's going to be a back and forth slugfest. And I think it's a must win for South Carolina. I do think right now it is the most important game of the 2021 season. It's just pivotal for the Gamecocks, especially ahead of that Georgia game and the rest of your schedule. You got to start this season 2-0. You got to find a way to do so. And like I said, I'm expecting pretty much a classic in Greenville. I think it's going to be a really, really good back and forth game.
Yeah, I think.
Go ahead, Kyle.
Go ahead. You've been okay.
No, it's fine. My question is kind of shifting gears before we let Chris go.
Yeah, I'll comment on this. I kind of agree with you about how the game's going to be. I think East Carolina has got you talk about stretches. We got a 3-game stretch to start the season. We open up with App State. App State's a 13-point favorite over us. They've got everybody back. You want to talk about teams with starters back and COVID benefiting them. App State would be one. So we open up
a lot of the non-power fives that like had guys that I think were like fringe NFL.
Yeah,
they really benefited because we played Troy, a couple of weeks later. They're the same exact way, man. They got like 19 of 22 back. It's like, what in the world? But
yeah, so we got App State week 1 in Charlotte. Then we play you guys, and we go at Marshall. So we don't get to catch our breath. And Marshall and East Carolina's a rivalry. We haven't played them in a few years. That's an old Conference USA rivalry. So we got 3 tough games to start the year. We need to win one of them. Then we get Charleston Southern. The way I look at it, we need to start the season 2-2. Now, here's where I argue with you, or not argue, but I'll point this out so you could be looked at as a positive. You say East Carolina's a must win for you guys to get to 6-6. Well, I would argue that point is because Shane Beamer's year 1.
Right.
You can improve dramatically from September to November in year 1 of a football coach. So you lose to East Carolina by a field goal in week 2. Who's to say you don't? I don't know what your schedule looks like. But who's to say you don't beat Tennessee and Missouri in back-to-back weeks in November? That can happen. While I'll agree with you, though, it sure would make things a lot easier if you guys are going to get to a bowl to beat East Carolina. But I wouldn't. I would argue the point, and that you can't do it without beating us because it being year 1.
Right, and that's fair. I'll say this, Kyle. That's fair. You look at South Carolina's schedule this year. I just really think you need to take advantage of the first half because you play again EIU, ECU, Troy, Vanderbilt within your first 6 games. Your second half looks like this: Texas A&M, Florida, Mizzou, Auburn, Clemson. So it definitely stiffens up in the second half. But I do agree with you. I mean, this is a team, and what we want to see, and I talked to Perry Orth about this, we want to see a team that gets better from week 1 to week 12, right? I mean, that's the natural progression of a football team. One of the only things I'll say that, of the couple things, I guess, that scares me about this team a little bit, it is depth. And, God forbid, and I want to knock on wood when I say this, the injury bug hits this team or you just start dealing with depth issues. This team does not have the depth to go through that. And so, I don't want to make it sound like that I'm saying, oh, man, if you lose to East Carolina, season's just over, just chalk it up, it's done. But, yeah, like you mentioned, while it's possible, I just think the obstacle, the objective, climbing that mountain, it's just going to get that much harder to get to that 6-win mark. So, again, like you said, while I don't want to make it sound like if you lose week 2, it's, oh, my gosh, just scrap the season. It's impossible to get to 6-6 or hit your goals. But I don't know. I just see it as one of those, man. I think if you are going to get to 6-6, I do think you got to beat East Carolina. I think if you lose to ECU, I don't personally think in my predictions, which again I'll drop next week, and I really haven't even finalized them, but I don't think you get to 6-6 if you lose to ECU. And which is interesting because, and this is a totally different conversation, the Vegas over/under for South Carolina is 3.5 total wins. Wow. I don't know if you guys have seen that. 3.5. So what that tells me, because I saw that, I can't believe it still. Vegas must think South Carolina is going to lose to either East Carolina or Troy. They have to. They just have to.
We'll go figure this. Our over/under is 4.5.
Yeah. So I mean, what does Vegas know right now? I guess we should all go to the bank and put the mortgage down. So I mean, I don't know. But no, it's it's not the end all be all for the Gamecocks. There will be 10 more games after you play ECU. But I just look at it, man. You got Georgia the following week. Got a tough Kentucky team the follling week at Williams-Brice. I think
Missouri was awful last year. Yeah, who knows what they'll be in year 2.
Yeah, you got to go to Mizzou though. That's the scary thing. Even when Tennessee's troubled, you got to go to Tennessee.
Didn't like Auburn's hire. To me, they just made a change to make a change. I don't know why.
Yeah,
I don't know why you fire Gus Malzahn and then go hire Boise's coach. I mean,
Nick Saban. That's why I guess. I don't.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Look, that guy. I don't know if people in down on the plains don't follow Boise football, but that guy hadn't done anything impressive by Boise standards.
Yeah, for sure.
Bubba's having trouble with his audio. He said, "Tell us about Alonzo Frank, grad transfer in hoops, East Carolina, and top 5."
Yes, yeah, Alonzo Frank. So I know Gamecock fans were definitely disappointed to see him go. A real big physical kid, and obviously missed the entire year last year, which I think sent South Carolina's season completely off the rails. And I'm not sure if you guys saw it all, but it was a really, really tough year for Frank Martin and Gamecocks basketball. And it's the state of the program we're at right now. It's funny, man. We haven't taught basketball in what feels like forever, but no, Frank's certainly one of those guys. Man, I think it'd be a great pickup for ECU. I think he'd absolutely dominate at that level and dominate for the Pirates if, just projecting him overall. But he was a really good player at the SEC level. I mean, a really big physical guy down low, and kind of always served as that spark plug, if you will, and was sort of the emotional leader. He was a young guy in Columbia, but he always came off to me as the emotional leader and kind of got the guys going on a team that I think lacked some leadership at times. So I think if ECU could pick up Alonzo Frankman, I think it'd be a fantastic pickup. I got to be honest, I don't know much about Pirates basketball, but Gamecock fans, we were certainly upset to lose him. So it's a program in Columbia certainly that's rebuilding, and Frank Martin, we could just go on and on about the situation there and kind of what he needs to do and in his 10th year now in Columbia. But no, if ECU was able to pick up Alonzo Frank, man, that would be a fantastic pickup. I think he's a really, really good player.
Yeah, East Carolina basketball has been in rebuild mode professionally since about 1993. We're not very good.
2013.
Right.
In 93. We were not very good. We've had a few bright moments here and there. The American is a very tough basketball conference. You're talking about Cincinnati, Houston, Wichita State, Temple, UConn just left the league recently. So Memphis. So it's a tough basketball league. We could definitely use him. Our best player, Jaden Gardner, just transferred to Virginia. So it would be a huge pickup.
No doubt, and hopefully when we'll have COVID killed our season, starting out 7-1 and didn't play for like 26 days. It was horrific. But football, we did all right. We hung in there as far as COVID and not having to cancel a lot of stuff. But as far as basketball, that really hurt us. But we'll save that for another show for sure. Man, thank you so much, Chris, for the time. We didn't realize that we were going to have you on for virtually. We have another guest that's been patiently waiting in the green room for a long, long time. But definitely love to have you back on, and definitely when we do our show from Dowdy Ficklin, love to have you on that day in September. And I guess it'll be beer for breakfast. We'll get you a Budweiser for breakfast. I guess we can look to that.
Kegs and eggs, man. Hey, Dave, Kyle, Bubba, this has been fantastic, man. Truly a pleasure. And man, I'll tell you this, man. Win, lose, or draw. Thank God football is back, and we're gonna have packed stadiums. We're gonna have packed tailgates. No matter what happens, man, we can all have perspective and be grateful for that. But no, seriously, man, we'd love to join you guys in the fall and look at.
I don't know what happened.
I don't know what happened either.
We lost there. Chris, apologies. I don't know, technical difficulties there. I don't know what happened, buddy. Appreciate Chris there. Chris Phillips from the Spurs Up podcast, and appreciate all he does for the Gamecocks and looking out for us. Now we're going to shift gears. Bubba, I know we're very excited to talk about USA baseball. And in fact, the baseball has not been a part of Olympics since the 2012 and 2016 Olympics. And now we're going into the crazy 2021 Olympics in Tokyo. And we have a very special guest.
Absolutely. This guy is the play-by-play voice of the High Point Panthers, also the play-by-play voice of USA Baseball. Unfortunately, he won't be able to make the trip to Tokyo, but he's calling the games that are taking place here in the States. And welcome in Daron Vaught. Daron, how are you?
I'm doing well, guys. How is everybody? And no worries on the wait. I mean, I know last time I was here, Bubba, you and we went on High Point basketball for like an hour, and it wasn't something that I expected, but I enjoyed it. So I expect this will be something similar.
No, we're very glad to have you on. Like I said, I thought one of the travesties of Olympics, and it was kind of a bitter thing for me as being a part of a baseball family, is to not have baseball a part of. It was crazy. I still don't understand why that happened, but anyway, we won't spend a lot of time on that. But what's the excitement like? The reason I brought that up, what's the excitement like knowing that you're going to have baseball where it should be back in the Olympics?
Yeah, I mean, it's high, right, for an organization like USA Baseball that it breads its or butters its bread with events like the Olympics and more recently the World Baseball Classic, which has turned into a huge international event for baseball. You know, also for which the Team USA won in 2017. So yeah, no, there's a lot of excitement. It's a cool situation too, because with COVID and everything and sort of mucking up international travel for a lot of our teams at USA Baseball, I'm in Kingsport, Tennessee, for instance, with the collegiate national team. Your guys' guy, Carson Wisenhunt, is here, expected to start a game here in a couple of days. I'm excited to see him throw. But this is the team, the collegiate guys, that's the team that's going to be facing the Olympics team when they train in Cary at the USA Baseball National Training Complex. So it's a cool opportunity for them, because otherwise, you know, their experience here with the collegiate national team, it's lacking the international play, but that's something that not many of the collegiate teams get to do. And, you know, they're going to get to play against guys like, you know, Todd Frazier and Tim Fedorovich and Edwin Jackson and Dave Robertson, the former Yankees on the Olympic squad too. So it's exciting. It's going to be a lot of fun. So we're barnstorming, if you will, the Appalachian League as it's been reimagined with new team names and is now a summer collegiate wood bat league. So we're doing that currently.
So the Appalachian League is no longer a rookie league?
Correct. So with minor league contraction, MLB actually purchased the league or took ownership of the league, turning it into a summer collegiate league. And now one of the cool things about it, though, Kyle, is that these teams, and I grew up right in the middle of the Appalachian League. So I'm from Wythe County, Virginia, and we're in Kingsport, Tennessee. I've got a brother that lives in Johnson City. So I'm sort of back home. And spent a lot of time at these ballparks growing up when they were the Kingsport Mets, the Johnson City Cardinals, the Burlington Royals there in North Carolina.
Danville Braves, yeah.
The Danville Braves, of course. And we were just there a couple of nights ago. They're now the Otterbots is their identity. But it's
the Otterbots?
The Otterbots, yeah. So it's my best understanding there is it's something to do with the Dan River going through the town. So that's where otter comes from. And then it apparently is an emerging like science and technology town with some sort of education around that, which is stuff I'm familiar with Danville, but I wasn't aware of that.
Oh, well, we happen to have a proud student of Averett University on the podcast here in Bubba Rosenbaum. Bubba, perhaps can you talk about the science and education there at Averett?
I cannot.
That's right. On our sister podcast, Talking Racing with Mike Ray is from Danville. I'll have to ask him. That's his hometown. So when we do our next show, probably in the next couple of days, I'll ask him if there's what's going on with otters and bots.
Yeah, the robot side of it. I don't know, but it makes for a cool, quirky mascot, right? So, for instance, Burlington, they're no longer the Royals; they are the sock puppets because of the industry there, the sock puppets. And you can imagine. Look, they have sold a ton of merchandise already, and they're not even.
You're saying that it's not a rookie league anymore, but MLB still owns it. It's a collegiate league.
Yeah. So as part of the minor league contraction this past that took place, this is the first year under the new format. MLB took ownership of both the Appalachian League and the New York Penn League, which are now both summer collegiate. And the New York Penn has taken the identity of a draft league. So they put prospects that are set to be drafted this year in that league, whereas the Appy League is more along the lines of similar to what we've got going on with the collegiate national team, freshmen and sophomores, right? Guys who are not necessarily draft eligible this year, but will be next year. And I'm telling you, we got 2 teams of 48 total guys, and most of them are going to be pretty high draft picks.
Okay, so they're considered kind of top prospects. I'm just the MLB ownership of it is what I find interesting in it being an amateur league.
For sure. And part of that, I think it's twofold, Kyle, in that, look, they took a lot of heat for contraction, right? I mean, a lot of these communities were really, really upset. Partially, it's to save face. They're like, hey, look, we're keeping baseball in your community, in your hometown alive. But part of it is sort of that connectivity that baseball hasn't had in the way, because of the way that the pipeline is built. It doesn't have that connectivity in the way that like a college football to the NFL does, right? We see somebody win the Heisman Trophy, they go first overall in the draft. Likely they're starting the very next season and a star player for whatever team they're on. Even guys like Jack Leiter and Kumar Rocker, who I know you guys saw enough of in that super regional, they're going to get drafted top 5, top 7 picks and going to be really, really, really good baseball prospects. It's going to take them 2 or 3 years to make it to the major league level. So a lot of the times you lose those players in the shuffle. And, once they're out of a casual fan's consciousness, it's rare that a casual baseball fan is going to pay attention and anticipate them making their way up. So, baseball has struggled with that connectivity for a long time. So I think keeping it in the same vertical was important to them.
Do you think, and I know we're going to talk about USA Baseball, but do you think 2 things about this? Do you think, one, with this being freshmen and sophomore, et cetera, do you think now that with MLB's involvement, that this will, I guess Cape Cod is still the premier summer league. Do you think this could challenge to be the premier summer league with MLB involvement, along with and do you think if it's successful that MLB could purchase other summer leagues like the Coastal Plain League?
Yeah, well, I think the CPL is a prime candidate for it, just based on the footprint, the sort of the profile of the type of player that they have. I don't know how much luck Major League Baseball would have trying to gobble up the Cape Cod League, because that's an entity in and of itself. Right. But in terms of, the Appalachian League trying to become a league of that level, that caliber, I think that's the intent. Right. And the intent ultimately is to sort of tie it into what we've got going on with the collegiate national team. So the best underclassmen can come here or wherever the collegiate national team goes, represent their country. And, we've got guys on the team and in this hotel right now that once they're done here, they're going back to the Cape to play in that league. And I think the intent would be, we want the majority of them to go to the Appy League, and we want Cape Cod, we want that to sort of remain the premier one, but be for the guys that are, it's like their last chance to impress somebody before draft time. Or if they go undrafted but are still a really good player, they can impress in the second leg of the summer and then get picked up by somebody, which, something happens in a lot of leagues. I know we had, I did games in Morehead City 10 summers ago this year. Wow. Okay. For the Marlins there. And it's a Coastal Plain League team. And we signed, I don't know if you guys would remember this name from college baseball. He played for Florida International, named Garrett Whittles. The reason he was prominent is because he came a couple games shy of Robin Ventura's hit streak record at the collegiate level.
Wow. Okay.
So Whittles was a big name at the time, but he's smaller in stature, just physically not as dominating. He was a scrappy player, and that's what made him good, but it doesn't really project well to the next level. But he was a guy, for example, we brought him in after he didn't get drafted. He played for the Marlins for 2 weeks. It created a lot of buzz within the CPL. Next thing you know, he was signed by the Cardinals and in their minor league system. So, to your point, I think the intent is for it to be collegiate national team, Appy League are going to work hand in hand with freshmen and sophomore players, and we'll leave the rest to Cape Cod. So there's a lot of building for the Appy League to get to that point, but it's certainly a possibility.
Well, I know that one thing you better have, you have to be like Daron Vaught. You have to have a lot of money if you want a Coastal Plain League team. So if you're a millionaire like Vaught, or I think Jim Goodman still owns that, doesn't he? From Channel 5, I believe, still owns the CPL. So you have to have some cash.
Because they've even got some league owned teams. As a matter of fact, the Holly Springs Salamanders.
Right.
Holly Springs Salamanders are a newer team,
Right.
and they are owned by Capital Broadcasting Company, and then the same company they own the Durham Bulls too, which is they've got a large umbrella over top of a lot of things. You're right.
Well, I have a question for you.
Yes.
Brought up by our very own Kyle Barber, but I'm going to ask you. We need a baseball announcer for East Carolina. Would you come down and meet our good friend Corey Glore? I put that on Twitter today. The biggest loss for our baseball program for ECU is that we're losing our good friend to great for Tulane, but not great for our ECU baseball and our ECU base or ECU family. Period. Losing Corey Glore.
Corey and I lightly know each other. I've got a lot of admiration for his work. He's great on the air, and you're right, fantastic for Tulane. Would you believe, Dave, you're not the first person to ask me if I would be interested in the East Carolina baseball radio job, and I'll leave it at that.
Nice.
I like and respect Cliff Godwin a lot, so getting to work with him would be a treat. I'm here with Elliot Avent now, who's the collegiate national team manager. Those two have an interesting relationship, but I like them both separately as individuals a lot.
Holding up.
He's good, man. I spoke with him. He of course, just out of precaution, quarantined himself before joining the collegiate national team here. So he did miss their first exhibition. But he rejoined and was there for a game, and we actually caught up with him. We've been doing some social media hits, just me with a coach and or a player, and just, hey, what do you think of the experience so far? What about this moment from this game tonight? That sort of thing. And it was so big picture with him. He was just, man, he was grinning and yelled at me when he first saw me and was like, hey. So he's excited, and I'll say this. First thing he told me, he's like, man, it's good to be on a baseball field and just have something to pay attention to that is not what was the past week. So yeah, no, I think he's coping with it relatively well for all things considered, because I mean, who would take it swimmingly, right? I mean, it was.
Well, I guess he's happy because Mississippi State won. So
I don't know if it is or not. I think NC State had a legitimate protest to be recognized as co-national champions had Vanderbilt won. I mean, legitimately.
I think it's a good point, Kyle. You're right. Now, I will say this about Wolfpack fans. I like Wolfpack fans for the most part. It got really, really annoying watching that College World Series and seeing Wolfpack fans on Twitter acting as if Mississippi State was winning it for them. And as a matter of fact, Logan Tanner, the player who, when he hit the home run, put up this hand signal, which is not the wolf, right?
No.
Right, guys? Put up this hand signal, has confirmed, because he's here with the collegiate national team, confirmed to us that he was not doing or trying to do the Wolfpack sign, which I was really glad to hear. I think what happened, the best I can tell, is he was doing this, the universal sign, I love you, that sort of thing. And he was directing it toward a certain section of fans. But I think he just forgot the thumb thing, and he was telling them rock on, whatever. It'd be a problem if they were playing the Texas Longhorns, right? Because then he's doing hook 'em. But whatever, I get it. I understood. And, as a fan of punk rock, I appreciate it, right? Just throw the horns, man. I get it.
I don't get why they would think that, winning it for them. I mean, like, they didn't want to win a national championship for themselves.
Mississippi State, that's just it. Mississippi State has been playing sports since 1895 and didn't have a national championship. Like,
I can't believe that.
In what world were they not trying to win it for themselves and themselves only?
And Darren, if you go back to the day, they've had so many great players. In fact, with my great uncle Roger Craig, with the Giants, with Will Clark, and you have Rafael Pomero. I mean, they've had so many great players back in the day that I can think of growing up as a kid before they made the MLB. And you think about that, and it's hard to believe with the stadium they have, with the the fan base they have that they've never won one. I mean, I knew that was the case, but after they won it, it was still like, I still can't believe that was their first.
Yeah, no, it's unbelievable. It's a program that's deserved it for a long, long time. And you know, even in recent vintage, they've had guys like Jenk Mangum, who I don't know if he's going to be the pro that Palmero or Will Clark was, but I mean, one of the greatest hitters in college baseball history as a switch hitter, and now in the Mets organization, the outfielder. And we've got a number of their guys here with the collegiate national team. They just got in, I think, yesterday, the majority of them, Landon Sims included, who's a really, really terrific pitcher, who just finished up his freshman season. I think he's draft eligible next year, likely a top 5-10 pick type guy. I was excited for them to win it. I would have loved, again, you know, back when I was producing the David Glenn show, we used to joke that we rooted for the show. So an NC State national championship would have been a win for the show, because that, you know what, it's July. We need something to talk about, buddy. We're gonna run with it. In that light, I would have loved to have seen an NC State national championship, for them to come away with it in Omaha. But I was thrilled for Mississippi State. I honestly would have been happy for Vanderbilt. I know they're sort of the evil empire, but Jack Leiter, Kumar Rocker, Carter Young for that team, a lot of formerly USA baseball guys that I've gotten to know a little bit over the years. So I would have been just as excited for them. But Mississippi State, for sure, a program that has deserved it for a long time.
No question about it. And East Carolina, very, very close. I've been saying on our show here, we have a show just for baseball. And if you do become the voice of the Pirates, then hopefully you'll join the tradition of Corey of coming on our weekly podcast in this in season called Extra Innings. But I'll be your agent. I hope that's 10%.
I will give you a tentative yes, right? Like if that happens, of course, 100%.
All right, cool. You heard it here first on the Sports Objective. But as far as the Pirates are concerned, with Carson Wisenhunt, with Wiz on the team, what are your thoughts on him? I mean, he had his second game we had against Vandy. I mean, you know, with when we have our two guys pitching, you know, you couldn't ask for anything more. Those guys pitched their minds, you know, and we just got, as Kyle said, as soon as Vandy was announced that we were going to have, that would be who we potentially play. That's a tough out for us.
100%. Now, I will say this. ECU matched up with Vandy because of that pitching tandem. It turned out just about as well as anybody in the country. They just, you know, in the end didn't pull it out, although it was a good series. I was looking forward to it the second it fell into place that way, because I'm a big Gavin Williams fan. I know he's projected to be a first rounder by most regards. Excited to see where he ends up in the Major League Baseball draft, less than a week away, a week from yesterday. But man, Wiz impressed me, because like you mentioned in that game, he went toe to toe with Jack Leiter in similar fashion as a guy that is here also with the collegiate national team from NC State, Sam Highfill. Big moments, and each one delivered in every regard. And Wiz was good all season long for the Pirates. Obviously, I mean, it was a dominating season for ECU in their conference. And he's been good. We haven't seen him yet in these exhibitions. I've got sort of – it's funny because it's USA versus USA, guys. It's a lot more laid back, right? Like, it's not quite as intense as if, you know, they're playing a 5-game set with Cuba or Japan or whatever. So we're playing 7 games, and pitching schedules are predetermined. So I know for tomorrow's game, oh, this guy's going to start and he's going to go 2 or 3 innings. And then the plan is to bring this guy in for 2 innings and then 1 for this guy to finish it out, that sort of thing. We haven't seen Wiz yet. He's scheduled to get the start and throw 3 innings, not tomorrow, but the following day. That would be Wednesday the 7th when we're in Johnson City. So I'm excited that will be his first exposure on as a Team USA pitcher. But no, it'll be good. And look, he's right up there with some of these other freshmen that wowed people in the college baseball world this season. Dylan Cruz, the center fielder from LSU, is here. And I mean, he's again right in that conversation with a guy like Landon Sims, who gained a lot of notoriety with a national championship run with Mississippi State. And it got a lot of attention because he's in the SEC early in the year too, because he makes a glove pop really loud because the guy throws hard. Wiz is right there in that conversation. It's a good thing because Gavin is out likely. I love that Godwin is staying for you guys in Greenville. Wiz is a guy that can sort of anchor down that pitching staff. And look, I know it felt like the year for ECU, right? Especially just to get to Omaha, just get to Omaha. I know it felt like the year, and it might be the most talented team Godwin's had in a long time. But Whisenhunt, especially if he develops in the way that others have under Godwin, we've got no reason to expect he won't. It's going to be a fine ace for you guys to sort of carry on and try and just get. Even it's man, I'm frustrated for you guys. I'm and I saw the interview with Cliff Godwin too, and he was here with the collegiate national team a couple of years ago on staff. With I think that was the Pulmonary team in 2018.
That's correct.
Godwin was on staff with, and I feel for him because like he's doing everything he can. That team is doing everything they can, but like you guys said, it was maybe the worst possible draw for this year.
It was, and you look at a team that Vandy is easier to get in a regional because if you get them in a regional and you can get them. And you even if you play them out in the losers bracket, if you can get them on Sunday after they're done with their two aces, and you can get them in a Monday game, you feel your odds are pretty equal.
100%, and it comes down, it boils down to having two aces and two guys that are. I mean, it's what got ECU in such favorable position. If you've got two pitchers that were as dominant throughout the year as Rocker and Leiter were, I mean, you just got to win two games. It was a brutal draw. I mean, for NC State, even on that side of the College World Series in Omaha, just a brutal draw given the format in that way. So yeah, no, it's such tough luck for ECU, and it just seems like that's always the case. And I know NC State fans feel the same way.
We'll get there. It'll probably be something like in 2016 when we almost made it. Will we come out as a 2 seed, 3 seed, whatever it was at UVA, and go on the road to Texas Tech and almost win it? It'll be when we least expect it, we'll make it.
Yeah,
we were a regional team, a regional program. Now we're a super regional program, 3 straight super regionals. So, I mean, hey,
it's steady, but that's progress, man. It's tough to accept that kind of progress because again, it comes really slowly, but. You got to rest assured that it's getting there.
No question. I said 3 straight. It's actually 3 in the last 6, I think 5 attempts or something like that. But anyway, you know what I mean about that. The team is definitely in the right direction for sure. Let's talk about that very thing. Thank you, Bubba. He's having trouble with his audio, so he's having to put the questions up here. This is from Bubba. Tell us about the Olympic team and the process. Has it been finalized? Because I know it was very tentative.
Yeah, and it's tentative for tricky reasons, right? Baseball in the Olympics as an international sport has been so inconsistent that Major League Baseball and its owners have been pretty staunch about allowing the best players to play and represent the United States. So the roster has been made final. It was sort of fluid before the qualifier in which we got in finally, which was a point of anxiety for a lot of people, especially the higher ups here at USA Baseball, because an Olympics without Team USA is trouble for them organizationally. So Team USA, one of the 6-team field, the Dominican Republic was the last to get in. Israel, Japan, Korea, and Mexico are all in. And we had to make a couple of tweaks to the roster from the qualifier because, again, with this Major League Baseball hang up about international play, if you're on a 40-man roster for a Major League Baseball team, you cannot play for Team USA in the Olympics, which is crazy, right? I mean, because think about it, 30 MLB teams, 40 players per. That's a lot of guys. Not all of them are Americans, obviously, but of them, a great portion of them are American-born players. And if you're eliminating those players from your pool, it's safe to assume the very best are gone, right? Mike Trout's not representing Team USA in the Olympics. He's got to, get healthy and play a season with the Angels. But to that same token, Japan is in that 16 field. They don't have a guy named Shohei Ohtani, who is the marvel and the spectacle of the baseball world currently. So I guess it doesn't quite even out most of Japan's best players. Ohtani's the exception. Most of Japan's best players play in the league in Japan, and they, for the most part, are willing to work with the national team over there. So it creates a cool situation, though, because you get this mix of veteran players who are just past their prime, maybe free agents, in some cases kind of halfway by choice. Todd Frazier is on the team. And he was with the Pirates during spring training, and it was more of a, hey, we don't have a spot for you once the regular season begins, Todd, but we respect you and want to give you this stage and a platform to sort of impress another team. So hopefully they'll scoop you up. And he played relatively well in the spring, but he also, in the back of his mind, knew he was going to have a chance to play on this team. So he committed to being on the team for the qualifier. After we got in, he signed with an independent league team just to stay fresh and get cuts and that sort of thing. And here you go. He's on the Olympic roster as well. So you get, free agent veteran guys like him. I mentioned Dave Robertson earlier, the former Yankee. I mean, at one point he was Mo Rivera's setup guy, and certain Yankee fans were like, oh, he's just going to slide right into the closer spot and be the successor to the greatest closer of all time at some point. Right. So, there's some pedigree there. There are 14 guys on the roster who have logged time in the major leagues. There are 19 that have represented a Team USA in the past, which is a big thing. It's very important for the organization. They like to retain talent. I mentioned Dylan Cruz of LSU here on the collegiate national team. He was with us at the 14U level, at the 18U level, and here he is now. He's going to be a high draft pick, so I know they're hoping that they can get him to represent USA on a professional level at some point. So it's something that they prioritize. So that's really important to them. And I think of those 19, 10 have won gold medals in international competition, which is good. I mean, it's not the Olympics, but that's good. That's the type of experience that they look for in this situation. But to the point of the makeup of the roster, it turns out to be just a really cool mix of veteran guys who have been there, done that in terms of being in the show, and some prospects that are bound to make their big league debuts in the next couple of years for sure. So, you look at the roster, it's a lot of guys who are in AAA or they're free agents because they're in that Todd Frazier camp or what have you. So I think the return mainly has been positive on the roster. It's going to be very competitive. Now, again, if we had all the best players from the U.S., we'd be the favorites by a mile. Then again, while I say that, the inaugural World Baseball Classic was that team that the USA constructed that was, everybody. Jeter, Chipper Jones, Roger Clemens, Andy Pettit, Mo Rivera, Ken Griffey Jr., and we didn't even place because
no motivation.
Well, I think that had something to do with it, Kyle. And I think players of that caliber were a little confused as to how much effort is allowed here, right? Like, what's my major league team going to be okay with? What's my agent going to be okay with? Am I able to lay out for this ball that's a tweener and a maybe ball, that sort of thing? And as part of my role with USA Baseball, I host our official podcast. Chipper Jones has been a guest, and I sort of asked him about that mix of guys. And the way he put it to me was that it's sort of a cultural thing too, because like when those guys see each other most often, it's in sort of an all-star game setting, which is very loose and laid back, and there's no pressure. It's totally an exhibition. But because baseball had already been out of the Olympics by that point for a while, none of these guys really had played international competition just because of the weird gap there in the time in between. Chipper described it as that. He was like, we just kind of didn't know how to prepare for it. And it's a microwaved setting, right? These guys have known each other for the collegiate national team for a few days, and they're rooming together, which I meant to mention this when I came on. I found it funny you guys had Chris on right before me, because Carson Wisenhunt, the only Pirate on this collegiate national team roster, is actually roommates on this trip with Will Sanders, a guy who plays for South Carolina, the only Gamecock on the collegiate national team roster. So just a funny anecdote. But yeah, no, it's exciting. It's for sure exciting. And they're going to play those 3 training games here to get tuned up before we ship them out to Tokyo. And I think it's a good roster. It should be competitive, not as competitive as it would be if we just stacked all of the stars of baseball against the world, but we can't always have that.
Could just put the season on hold for a month, 1 year, and let's just go see us kick everybody's butt.
Yeah, and there are countries and events that do that, right? Like if I don't know how big of soccer fans you guys are, but the English Premier League, which is the greatest soccer league in the world.
You and Dave can talk about that.
So the EPL would be sort of the MLB equivalent, the baseball equivalent of the MLB of MLB, or the NBA in basketball, it's the best league in the world, right? Well, the EPL has paused its season for international competition at times, and other international leagues have in soccer as well. And I don't see what would be wrong with maybe there's a compromise. You take a month off in the middle of the season, or you start 2 weeks. You start 2 weeks sooner. You end it 2 weeks later. You give everybody this month off, some of whom might be all-stars, and they participate in the all-star game, but you play that at a point that doesn't interfere with the Olympics, right?
Let's get the all-star game 1 year. Let's just like you said, start it 2 weeks. Start it 2 weeks earlier, end it 2 weeks later, and just skip the All-Star game.
Skip the All-Star game, and we'll take the All-Stars wherever and crush everybody and win gold. I love that idea, Kyle. It's too easy. It's too easy.
What I don't understand, it's not USA Baseball. What I don't understand with MLB, and they've got a lot of problems. We'll have you on again later down the road for that, for definitely the labor situation, but that's a whole nother show, as they say. But what I don't understand about that very thing, the 88 basketball team, USA, they don't win gold, right? So they put, 92 was those guys, half those guys could probably win the gold for the dream team.
Dave, you might want to call that 92 basketball team a dream team.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like the dream team do the same thing for baseball.
That's clever.
No, I know you said about the World Baseball Classic, though. I think if it was Olympics, they would know exactly what they're playing for. Yep. And those guys, we have the best baseball players. Not the best. There's some, obviously, I know international that are in the mix for MLB, but for the most part, the United States is dominant in this sport. And I don't understand why. I understand as far as getting hurt, but you're talking once every 4 years. You're not talking a commitment for every single year. I just have a hard time. And I know it's not USA Baseball, it's an MLB thing. And I don't understand why the owners wouldn't say, you know what, this is great for the game. We have a sport that's not number one in the country. This is our platform. And I know, I'm putting words in the mouth for USA Baseball, but I would think they're like, of course we want the best possible players. Mike Trout. Oh my God, my son is growing up and he said, Daddy, do you know who Mike Trout is? He asked me.
Should have been a Pirate.
Yeah. No, could have been. Should have been. Yep.
Yeah. But how does that?
It's look, as a sort of mouthpiece for USA Baseball, I can't necessarily claim to know what goes on in those conversations at all times, but I know that winning international events for Team USA winning international events is definitively a good thing for everyone within this organization, right? Yeah. When the World Baseball Classic championship happened in 2017, everyone celebrated because some of them knew they were probably getting raises, right? It's that simple. So even if it's just for that motivating factor, this organization wants to put out the most competitive team possible. So I would imagine it's an interesting give and take between USA Baseball and Major League Baseball, the team's owners, to try and figure out, okay, what's going to work best that also limits your risk of, a Bryce Harper who makes $30+ million per season getting hurt in the middle of the season, and then the Phillies losing out on him for 2 months or whatever, depending on an injury, that sort of thing. But again, other sports, other leagues find a way to do it. They find a way to be okay with it and reasonably justify the competition for country and as a promoter of the game, which you guys and I all know baseball needs as much of that as it can get. And, I love it. And it's the reason I'll talk to anybody about it, is because I think it's a beautiful game and we need to promote it more. And I'm a very, very small planet or meteor in that universe, but I'm going to try like hell. Right. So, and the thing, Dave, too, is we have so many great Olympic moments in USA Baseball history. I think about a guy like Jim Abbott, who came fresh out of college at Michigan. Without a hand, an inspiring as hell story to begin with. It came out of Michigan and went straight to the collegiate team. That's back when they were the Olympic team.
Right.
And won us an Olympics. I mean, he beat Cuba almost single-handedly with some of those performances. And then I talked about the connectivity a little bit earlier. Then he follows that up with being in the Angels starting rotation without ever playing minor league baseball. 04, of course. I mean, right? Who could forget, or 2000, excuse me, who could forget the Ben Sheets, Tommy Lasorda that year? I mean, we've got pictures all over the place of Lasorda and Sheets, down on his knees with his arms up in the air after throwing the final out around the building at USA Baseball. And it's just it's an incredible moment. Doug Mankiewicz was on that team as well. And it's something that if you talk to those guys and you ask them, they never forget it. And guys with long, viable major league careers like Sheets, like Mankiewicz, they'll talk about it years later. Mankiewicz named his boat. He's got a boat that he named, I don't remember, but it's a reference to the 2000 gold medal team, right? And he won. He received the last out at first base for the Boston Red Sox in 04 when they broke their drought, right? But he holds a gold medal at the Olympics in higher regard, because it's the Olympics, and that's the weight that it carries. And it is a little bit discouraging because sometimes it feels like we don't all see it that way.
I remember the Durham Athletic Park growing up in Durham and seeing the USA team against Cuba in '84. I was 11 years old at the time. That was one of my favorite baseball games of all time. And just thinking about the Cold War, if you think about, I won't go into that part.
Right. This is not a history podcast, best of my knowledge.
Right. But just that kind of thing that going on, and the Cold War and all that kind of stuff going on, and USA and Cuba. I mean, two great teams. It was a great moment. But as far as the national team, how did they get to? Can you help us understand? And I'm a fan of baseball, and I love the facility at Cary. How did it end up in Cary?
That's a great question to which I don't have much of an answer, to be honest. I'm thankful that it's there because, growing up in Virginia, I came down here sort of on a whim, and it was to, about a year after I moved down to North Carolina that I met up, or I got linked up with David Glenn and got what was then my first full-time job in sports media, producing for him. And then it sort of allowed me to pursue the freelance play-by-play stuff. And, then I'm like, man, I love college basketball. I'm in the hotbed of college basketball in the entire country right here in the Triangle of North Carolina. Oh, wait, I played and loved baseball, and USA Baseball is headquartered here too. Like it was a lot of dumb luck. And it's a good question. I need to look into that. I'll follow up on how in the world it ended up in Cary, North Carolina, because the organization was, before the National Training Complex in Cary, was based in Durham. I do know that.
Right.
But at that time, they would ship. You talk to some of these guys that represented Team USA before the training complex was built, and they would ship them to various facilities in Tennessee and Florida. And that would sort of be where they met up. Surprise, Arizona is still to this day a sort of usual spot for our teams when it's conducive to scheduling and proximity and that sort of thing. But no, the National Training Complex went up, and you would have to imagine it has something to do with the progress and overall development of the Triangle area, because it's the National Training Complex is a town of Cary entity, right? So it's through a partnership with the town of Cary that we're able to use that. And but yeah, no, I'll follow up. I'll get back to you guys on a history lesson.
No doubt about it. In fact, before we let you go, can you plug your social media and obviously the podcast? I'll love to listen to it. I didn't know you did a podcast. So
yeah.
Well, he's a human being, Dave. Of course he does a podcast.
Yeah, right. So I'm at Daron Vaught. It's a good thing about having a relatively novel name, the way mine is spelled. I'm just at Daron Vaught. It's down in the corner there, so no spaces or anything on that's my handle on anything that I can have a handle on: Twitter, Instagram, you name it. Well, not you name it. I saw you guys have TikTok. I'm not even on TikTok. That's progress for you guys there.
That's on this side of the. I'm not.
Yeah, we haven't done much with it. You know, I'm trying to get up with some high school girls, see if they can shake their asses.
I was gonna ask if Bubba was doing a jig on there, right?
You know, we're gonna get some people to impersonate people. We're gonna come up with parodies to songs that don't make any sense, and it's gonna be huge. It's gonna be huge.
I love it. So yes, I'm at Daron Vaught. The USA Baseball podcast is covering the bases, so you can find it wherever you get your podcast. Just search USA Baseball covering the bases. You'll find it. We are close to 50 episodes deep. We've been doing it for a few years at this point. It started as monthly. And in that first run of guests, I mean, we started it off. Scott Brocious accepted a job with the organization a couple years ago. He was our very first interview. We've had the likes of, I mentioned, Chipper Jones, a Hall of Famer, Jessica Mendoza, ESPN voice, has been on there as well. Troy Tulowitzki, who is on staff with Elliott Avent here. He's an assistant for the Texas Longhorns now. I don't know if you guys were aware of that. So he's on staff with Elliott Avent here. He was on the collegiate team in 2004. When Avent was an assistant. So there's a good relationship there. I've seen they've just sort of rekindled a flame, to be honest. I don't know that they've seen each other since 2004, and they've been inseparable since they got here. So Troy Tulowitzki has been on, former Philadelphia Philly great. Ryan Howard has been on. Michael Young of the Rangers for a long time has been on. I mean, we've had some pretty big names. Okay, our other Hall of Famer. I had Cal Ripken Jr. on in December.
Oh my God!
And somehow overlooked that. He was fantastic. My dad's favorite player ever. And I grew up as a shortstop and third baseman. So he and Chipper were my guys growing up. And to have had both of them on has been surreal. So it's been a lot of fun. We do it now twice per month. We have a prospect episode that sort of highlights a younger player that might not be as familiar of a name. Kumar Rocker's been with me on there. And then we'll do sort of a feature interview every month as well. That's usually a former pro, somebody who's spent some time with Team USA. The good news is, man, the pool is large. Like, I don't have to stop doing this anytime soon because we've had a lot of good players come through here. So yeah, that's Covering the Bases, the official podcast of USA Baseball.
And when's the do you know off the hand? I know it's the end of July, but when's the first game for baseball in the Olympics? Do you know offhand?
Yeah, for the Olympics, so we'll do the training games on the 18th, 19th, and 20th. The 18th and 20th will be in Cary at the National Training Complex, and the one that's sandwiched in there in between is going to be at Durham Bulls Athletic Park on Monday, July 19th. The U.S. opens up in Olympic competition. That tournament starts on Friday, July 30th, and I think the U.S. plays Israel for their first game. At 7 p.m., if I'm not mistaken. That would be Japan time. So something like 6 a.m. in the States here on the East Coast. So like I said, it's them, Dominican Republic, Israel, Japan, Korea, and Mexico is the 16 field. So they'll start with Israel on July 30th. And hopefully win a lot and bring home gold.
Sounds good. You can download the Peacock app. I think they're going to have like every single 7,000 hours, or certainly NBC. It's going to have hours on there for that, so you can see baseball or whatever sport you want. Daron, man, thanks so much for coming on, and you were also generous with your time. So we have our another long podcast, but it was well worth it. I appreciate you so much. Thanks for your patience, and good luck with USA Baseball, my friend.
Yeah, thank you guys, Dave, Bubba, Kyle. Great to catch up, and we'll do it again soon here. Okay.
All right, take care. All right, see you later, man. All right, bye. All right, that's Daron Vaught there, the USA play-by-play voice of USA Baseball. And hey, by the way, Kyle, what do you think having him on? You know, I think he would make a great voice of the ECU Pirates.
Yeah, if he's interested, and
somebody reached out to him.
Yeah, he's definitely somebody that maybe IMG's talking to. I'm not sure, but he would do a great job. Very knowledgeable about baseball, great personality. Seems like he'd be a good fit. Corey, first of all, personality reminds me he's similar to Corey. You know, so I immediately thought great fit. And no, I think if he's interested, we're interested. They're interested. If it can be worked out, it is something definitely that the East Carolina and IMG needs to pursue.
No doubt about it. I tell you what, he actually was talking about, did a great job as producer of the David Glenn Show, our good friend DG. So did that for a while, and then done really well with his play-by-play work over the years. So congratulations to him. Do you have anything before we go, my friend?
Well, not a thing, man. We sit here in the summertime. I've been off for 12 days. So I'll go back to work tomorrow. Not looking forward to that at all after being off for 12 days. But vacation comes to an end at some point, and back to reality tomorrow. But besides that, just counting down the days to football, man.
I know 61 days, my friend. We might as well say like 60 now. 60 days to opening day for us, and it should be a great game with Appalachian State. By the way, I want to say one thing, and then we'll get out of here. I think that's should be a touchdown. With ECU should not be 13 points down as far as the line is concerned. I think it'll be closer to a touchdown by the time we get to that game. Not that it really matters. Whoever wins on the field is what matters anyway, but I think that I would put App State at about a 7-point favorite. Realistically, a touchdown favorite. I think 13 is a little strong. I haven't seen that heard for the last few days, but I think that's way too high.
I mean, if you base it on records, if you base it on, maybe even stats, that's kind of what they're basing it on. It's computer simulated. I saw one computer simulated score of that game. They were giving them away free right now because of it being so early. But I saw one computer simulated score had Appalachian State winning that game 34-13. So, they're not just pulling it out of thin air. The thing is, we were a lot better last year than the record indicated, and our stats got better as the year went on. It'll be a heck of a ball game. The spread is what it is. Appalachian should be favored. It will be an upset if we win the football game.
Right.
And we should approach it as such. Like I told several people, App has taken our spot. They're what we used to be, and it's time for us to go get our spot back.
Get our jersey, so to speak, when it comes to big boy football, no doubt about it. Kyle, thank you very much, man, as always, and we'll look forward to more shows. And by the way, I know Bubba's having trouble with his connection, but want to remind fans, next week we're going to have Donnie K on for ECU offensive coordinator, Donnie Kirkpatrick, and we're also going to have, I know, Phil Steele, the College Football Bible, the king of all the college football media when it comes to predictions, and he has
us in his most improved list.
Yep.
He's pretty bullish on the Pirates. Only problem is our schedule. But he has us in his most improved list, but still just 7th in the conference because the American is so tough. But he has us flirting with the bowl game.
And I like that a lot. I think the three of us are going to be going to a bowl game come December. We'll see over it out. All right. We want to thank all our guests. Thank you, Kyle and Bubba, my friend. We're out of here. We've had a long podcast, but we had two great guests. So Chris Phillips of Spurs Up, and of course, Daron Vaught, play-by-play voice of USA Baseball. Thanks to both of them. Thanks, Kyle, Bubba. Good night, everybody. And as always, go Pirates.
Yo, what's going on, y'all? This is Udon Cheek, assistant track and field coach at East Carolina University. You are plugged into the Sports Objective Podcast. If you are a fan, you are plugged into the right place. And if you're really a fan, you will share that link. My heart is purple and gold. I'm a pirate down to my soul. And I don't back down, not at all. Find out when the cannons explode. Boom!